we started a theme this month, influencers. Herman started last week and he did such a good job telling us that we need to be a community and the consequences of not being part of a real life community. So that was a good sermon. You're welcome to. Is that on Facebook? I think is a link for you guys to go and listen to that. So before I start today, it's confession time. Talking about something that I don't know anything about when it comes to influencers. Apart from the clips that you guys sent me, I don't really connect or see any influencers or people. I'm not exposed to that. In the newsletter, I quote the Influencer Marketing Hub, and they say, influencers are people with a reputation for their knowledge and expertise on a specific topic. Well, I've seen that a certain age or any experience or truth is not a requirement of the clips that I saw of influencers. That is not even necessary for you to be an influencer. They get paid because of people who watch them. And research says that their influence can be neutral as well. So with neutral influences, we've got this entertainment kind of thing, and that's more or less what I get, things that make you laugh. And then awareness. They inform their followers of important topics, things that are happening in the news and things that are happening in the world. So they come with extra knowledge or awareness of certain things, and then they educate you as well. So that's when they're neutral. They bring more info about a specific topic or event or whatever. They make you laugh a lot, and there's an awareness of things that are going around. But then there's also the negative part of influencers. And I think al die ou mense maak so. Ouer mense maak so. There's definitely a negative part. People can appear to be experts and know nothing about the subject. So you don't know what they know. There's no accountability or there's no margin that you can actually see whether they are an expert or not. It's just someone with an opinion on the other side of a camera. The second thing is they can act totally different from who they are and what they normally act out or live. So it's so easy to put up makeup and make yourself beautiful and say a few things which is so different from who they really are. And I actually saw an advert once where they had this little girl. She must have been about 14 years old. And by the time she was finished, ready to sit in front of the camera, you would think that it was this amazing adult with a business, beautiful blonde. I mean, I couldn't believe it was the same person. So that's the unrealistic expectations that happens as well when they've got a negative influence in our lives. They bring about unhealthy self-image. Because when we look at people, we think that's the norm. Sometimes we look at it and we think, okay, that's what I'm supposed to look like, or this is what I'm supposed to act like. And there's this unnecessary expectations because and people develop unhealthy self-images. I made a statement there. I said, if you don't know who you are vulnerable to others telling you who you are. And what do they know? God is the one who created you. It's so easy for us to listen to others and try and be who they think we should be. And I'm not talking about rebellion now. I'm talking about going to God. He's the one who created us. He's the only one who knows who we should be. So we need to know who we are. If we don't, other people will try and influence us and tell us who we are. So another point is they promote materialism and those values. Because very often they encourage you to overspend, excessive spending, and that increases poverty. So that's also a downfall of influencers. They can also spread misinformation and fake news, which is obviously could be harmful for individuals as well as society. So those are the 4 negative things that can happen, according to my research. But then there are all the positive stuff that happens as well. En nou kan die ouer mense maar weer sê ja. We don't always recognize or see this. This is new. To be an influencer and actually make a living of that is like a foreign idea when you're over a certain age and you think you must work for your money. So there are positive things. People get inspired by influencers, motivated to reach their goals. That's a good thing, isn't it? It depends what the goals are. I agree. They can give recommendations, helping people to make informed decisions if they have the true facts. They can help you. I sometimes go and Mrs. Google tells me a few things, sometimes when I need to make decisions. So I always taught my children to make calculated decisions. If it was the wrong decision, jy vat die pak. But at least you had all the information when you made the decision. So informed decisions. They also promote healthy lifestyles and healthy habits often. There are those influences as well. So overall, an influencer can have either positive or a negative or just a neutral influence in our lives. But they can shape people's thoughts, behaviors, and decisions. And that's a bit scary, isn't it? If you just think of how much influence they have by watching over and over the same thing, they can shape your thoughts. Your thoughts influences your behavior and your decisions. It depends what values they promote, whether this is a good thing or not. So if you think about that, it's a bit dangerous. But if it is someone who has discovered Jesus as their Savior, I've seen many Christians use this as well. That's the clips that you guys sent me. To encourage others and to build their faith. And it could be life-giving if it's used with the right motives and the right values. So the truth is, we are all called to be influencers. After all of that, you are called to be an influencer. Years ago, it was also called evangelism or evangelists. Or these days, we also talk about mission. We've got someone here this morning that knows very well what it is to have missions. Yes, ons moet 'n afspraak reël, Janas. Regtig, volgende keer as jy kom, moet ons jou 'n geleentheid gee om bietjie te praat. While I'm busy with that, Janas, won't you stand up? Janas Leoner is the person who took Gert's place at Biblia. Remember, Gert was part of our congregation? So Janas, thank you for being here this morning. And his wife, Nolene, is part of our family now, so he's the person who took Gert's place. And next time we'll organize and you can just share with us a little bit. So, years ago we talked about evangelism, and these days the modern word is missions. Nou wil ek 'n vraag vra. Hoeveel van julle het ek nou verloor? Using those words. How many of you has just thought now, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to those who are called to be evangelists or missionaries. Or those who preach the word. Have I lost you? Come on. If I can prove this morning that this includes you, to be an evangelist or an influencer or a missionary, doesn't matter what the word is you want to use, if I can prove this morning that it includes you, will you consider being a positive influencer in people's lives and take it seriously? Come on. Will you? Okay, let me prove it to you. Jesus himself said that each one of us is an influencer. Being a disciple of Jesus and a follower of him and the life he lived makes us an influencer. Because we were called to live that life. It's not just pastors and leaders. We were all called, each one of us. And the other thing is, we do not have to become an influencer. We're already influencers. And let me prove that to you. Matthew 5, verse 13 to 14. Let's go to the word. Turn to Matthew 5, 13 to 14. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and tramped under the people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. I think salt and light has got influence, don't you think? Light is the quality that we share with God. Jesus says he's the light, the truth, and the way. And God says to us, you come and be the light in the world for me. And I think that's the influence that we can have. It shows that we're already influencers. And I'm not going to elaborate on salt and light. It was part of my sermon in April, and you can go and listen to that if you want more info. But what I want to get to is that we already influencers. Don't have to become influencers. Just the fact that we're following Jesus, we are called to be influencers. So, how do we influence the people around us, positively or negatively? Are we becoming unsalty with our own opinions and selfishness? It says, then it's useless. Or are we giving good flavor with the truth? And the truth obviously refers back to Jesus, because he is the truth. So the kind of influence that we have on other people, is that a positive or a negative influence? And that's something that you can just answer for yourself. I've written down here, the way we live our lives is a powerful testimony that already influences those around us, either positively or negatively. And you can go and read Proverbs 27. We are not called to escape life and the world. We are not called to be in a fantasy world behind a screen to influence people. And there's nothing wrong with making videos and putting that on TikTok or wherever. Is TikTok, no? Or on social media, that sounds better. We are called to go out and do. And that adds to what Herman said last week. That physical community thing. Social media community, it's not a real community. You don't have to rub shoulders. There's no character building in that. But we're not called to just sit behind a screen. It's a great tool, and I use it the little that I know. But we are called to do good works and be a true community. Care for one another. We are called to show love and compassion, to forgive, to have patience, to show kindness. Isn't that an amazing thing? If you walk in somewhere and someone has got a friendly face and greets you, and I mean, that fuzzy feeling, hy gaan nie deur 'n skerm nie, jong. That feeling is just amazing. That love. When we were intentional about serving and loving, we are influencing people in a wonderful way. It's life-giving to people. We are influencing people to know God, and that glorifies God. Because we are living the life that Jesus has called us to live. And that makes us influencers. John 13. If you don't believe me, I've got a lot of guns this morning. Let's go. So John 5:16 says we glorify God. Then John 13:34 and 35 says, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another. How do we demonstrate our love? Ek kan vir jou 'n boodskap stuur en ek doen redelik met 'n hartjie en 'n ding, 'n blom of 'n iets, hang af of jy 'n man of 'n vrou is. Ek maak 'n verskil. Maar is dit nie net beter as jy inkom en ek kan jou 'n drukkie gee? Of as ons mekaar face to face kan sien en kan praat nie? To be intentional in serving and loving. God puts his people in places of influence for his purpose of grace. He uses us to demonstrate his love. We've got the fruit of the Spirit, so that will influence people in wanting to know God, in a life, a new life, a new kingdom, a new destiny, a new inheritance. I always say we are road signs to God. Ons is padwysers na God toe. People are not supposed to stop where we are. We are just road signs to God. We are not their God. But if we want to be those road signs, we are showing people the way. We are influencing them to take the right road. Philippians 2:13, let's look at that. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Do all things without grumbling and disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life. We are placed in places of influence so that we can bring glory to God. We can show people who God is and road signs to his heart. If you thought that you were doing the job or the work that you are doing for money, you've got half of the story or a third of the story. Yes, we do need money in this world, but we're not going to stay in this world. Our life is not in this world. Our purpose and life is in a kingdom that's coming. So the purpose for you to be where you are is for the kingdom first and foremost. The work that you do is first and foremost to be an influencer in God's hand. Remember the two little circles wat ek en Mia's altyd gebruik? I'm going to use both hands. Two circles. In the middle is where we live. We live in the middle. The world and God's kingdom. So if God places you in a job or in a certain place, in a groups of friends or wherever, you are placed there first and foremost to be God's influencer in their lives in a positive way. Secondary, to earn money, to live. That's just the way God provides for you through that channel. He is our provider. He just chose that channel for you right now to provide for you. That's another sermon. So the last point is that we influence others according to what influences us. Can I say that again? We influence others according to what influences us. If we spend hours and hours and days on YouTube or TikTok, fill in the blank, whatever it is for you, dis al die twee wat ek ken, and Facebook, we will lose the boldness to tell others about God. It will become more difficult and difficult to speak about God. You see, the enemy is against community. And his main aim is to get you to one side. Because then we lose focus. And we start getting busy with other things. There's no one else that can encourage you or that can spur you on to walk the walk of faith. Wasn't it inspiring this morning? Het julle nie opgebou wat die ouens gedeel het vanoggend nie? Of course. And you think, yes, I want that as well. Lord, work in my life as well. So our saltiness will fade and our lights will dim if we sit on our own and are not part of an active community. Those things start to occupy our minds. those things on TikTok, depends what you watch, but TikTok, Facebook, or whatever it is, social media, starts to occupy your mind. TV programs, and it becomes the loudest voice in your head. If you listen enough, it becomes the loudest voice in your head. And that influences us. And with that perspective and that worldview, we influence other people. 1 Peter 3:15, let's read that. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile you, your good behavior in Christ, may be put to shame. You see, people will see what's going on in our lives. If we are living a life of hope, they will come and ask, but why do you have so much hope? Where does that come from? And we must be ready to tell them. That's part of being an influencer, or part of being a missionary, or part of being an evangelist. Every one of us are called to draw people closer to God. So what is the voice in our lives? Is it God's voice that is the loudest? Or do we think and ponder on all those things that we watch so often? How will people know that we have hope? They see it. We don't realize, but people read us. They see us. We influence people as we go along. Have I started to, or stated my case yet? We are all evangelists, missionaries and influencers, whether we realize that or not. We are all called to do that, not just the church leaders, or not just the one person who wears the title evangelist. There is a fivefold ministry in the church, but that doesn't mean they're the only guys that are obedient to the call in Matthew 28. God called all of us to be influencers. If you are home, your children or friends, you are the example, and you're either influencing them closer to God, closer to Christ, or closer to the world. If you're at work, your colleagues, your friends, your clients, you are an influencer in their lives. Whatever we are, our speech, our attitude, our conduct tells a story and influences someone. Our attitude, our speech, our conduct. Ouch. My hope is that the loudest voice will be the voice of Christ in us, in our ears, minds, and hearts. So shall we allow God to influence us in such a way that the impact that we have on people, just by rubbing shoulders, will be a positive one? I want to end off with Benjamin Reiki. He wrote, "Whether through leadership, speech, example, or resisting negative influences, we are called to be agents of change, reflecting Christ in every aspect of our lives."